We're going to move back into boxing, and we're going to discuss. This is a very important topic, and I really believe this is one of the topics we're here for, is matchmaking. And everyone does it differently. Everyone has different processes. But what we did is we're going to ask Greg, Sirb, and Andy to come up and speak. And after they're done speaking, we will go to questions. Thank you. Right here.
Greg, you wanna start because I love your starts.
He doesn't need a mic.
Look, we do this. I think to me and Andy, and I think to some of the guys that've been around, this is the most important part of the convention we have. Our job is to approve the box. That's our job. Even if it's not in your state regulation or your tribal regulation, federal law gives you that authority. It gives you that authority. I don't want to hear any more commissions say, I don't have the authority, he passes medicals, he's allowed to fight. You do have the authority. Use it. When we put fights together, that's our job. When Bruce came up to speak, I love Bruce Trample. I think he's a good matchmaker. But he represents the promoter. That's who he represents. We represent the commission. We're regulators. When you regulate, you make those kind of decisions. I have to go to a number of issues. One, I got the promoter that wants to fight. Two, maybe a television network. They already approved the fight. Three, maybe there's a sanctioning body involved. They approved the fight. Four, I got the boxer himself. They want the fight. But who's the last person? The fifth part of that leg is the commission. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts. You have to take that job responsibly. You have a handout. It's a boxer's watch list. I've been putting this together now for 3 years. I'm not going to say they shouldn't fight. But there's some people on that list that should not be competing. Should not be competing.
Greg,
opponents are opponents. That's what happens. We know that. Penn State isn't going to play Notre Dame every Saturday in college football. Why? Because they might get beat every Saturday. Either way. So Penn State plays a lesser opponent. It's the same thing in boxing. But an opponent that you approve makes a fight. Some of the opponents that get approved, they're not fights. They're not contests. They're exhibitions. And we see that. We don't approve exhibitions. You're supposed to approve a matchup. That's what the public is paying for. A matchup. A contestant. A contest. Where I'm striving to win. My opponent's striving to win. It's not an exhibition where the other guy has no chance at all. At all. This is the most important role we have. And when me and Andy got together to do this, Andy decided he put together a slide for us, and we're going to walk this slide through for you. Any questions, ask. And we'll make comments as we go through.
So, look, Greg and I wrote these letters independently. I found that you've all got the letter. I find it interesting that the information on the letter is very similar. And we wrote it independently. So this is the way I do matchmaking in California. Everybody does it a little bit different. Bob does it exceptionally well. I have a lot of fights. I have to find a way that I can make sure the fight's, what's the first rule? Safe. Is the fight safe? Because if the fight's not safe, I'm not moving on. Don't waste my time. It's valuable. I used the Boxing Severity Index adopted by or presented at this organization back, when was it, Greg? 2002? 2003? 2003. Dr. Homansky, chair at that time, I believe, of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, made this thing. You've got it on your handout. It's on the back of my letter. So just follow along. It's pretty helpful. So this is works, and if there's a doctor in here, they're going to know what I'm talking about. But it's based off that coma scale that assesses, like, if you're in a coma. Somebody knows it starts with a G. A Glasgow coma scale. Yeah. All right. So it's based off of that. So the first one's activity. Has this guy been fighting lately? Okay. Just so you know, every pro debut is going to be a +1. Okay. Recent record. This is important. If they're on a losing streak, they get them some points. If they've lost 3 of the last 4, they get 1 point. But if they've won 3 of the last 4, they get to take a point off. So the lower you are on this scale, the better you're, the safer on this sheet you are, the safer. This sheet's for safety.
Look, let's take the first one. Lost five or more in a row. I've had fights like that. I'm not a big state. I'm a club fight state. 5 or more in a row. That's a red flag for me right off the bat. Now, why would I approve a guy that lost 5 or more in a row with a kid that's 12-0? What do you think's going to happen? He's going to be 6. He's going to lose 6 straight. That's basically what's going to happen. But if I have a guy that's lost 5 straight, maybe I match him up with a kid that's lost 4 straight, or maybe he's 2-2. And how many rounds? Probably a 4-round bout. I get confused when I see a kid lost 5 in a row. He's the main event against a kid 16-0, and he's in the 10-round bout. No. That shouldn't work that way. I'm not saying you shouldn't let him fight, but 5 in a row, that's a red flag. That's a red flag.
And let's just make sure everybody understands. This is for boxing. Okay? MMA is matched somewhat differently. Certainly you can draw some synergies from this, but MMA is a bit different. There's lots of variables in MMA. So this is for boxing. Let's just be clear. Second, the third criteria is, how did you lose? Because if you're getting stopped a lot, you're really racking up the points. And look, these are combined, so you could lose 5 or more in the row. But if you're getting stopped, you've already blew. You don't come to California. You've already blew my scale. Okay, so because we don't let. I've let a total of 5 5s, maybe 6, but I think it's 5 5s fight. I have never saw a +5 fighter win a round of boxing in California. Never seen it. No. They usually get stopped in 1. But if you get 3 points, you're already you're getting close to, you're in the high risk scale just barely. 2, 1. Next criteria, age. If you're greater than 44, you get some points. If you're greater than 35, you get some points.
Is that legal?
Sure is. Pat, look, no, I'm glad he asked it, because I get asked about age discrimination from time to time. By regulation, which is a definition of statute, the executive officer of the California State Athletic Commission controls all matches within the state, and I can use this criteria to establish what is considered safe and unsafe. Remember, this is not a competitive scale. This is a safety scale. Okay? Safety, Pat. Safety. This is the thing.
Let me ask one question. When we talk about the knockout, if you have a knockout, whether it's a TKO or KO, and it's by a body shot, and you know that as a commissioner, it's a body shot.
You need to write it down.
Please put that on your record. Lost TKO, body shot. I have a little more leeway maybe of letting that kid fight, knowing that he was knocked out cold or he lost by a body shot.
That's right.
So mark that on your record. That's very helpful when we're matching fights.
That's right. And then just ring age. If they've been doing it longer than 5 years, or they got greater than 500 rounds, they get a point. Okay? So then we come down here to the total score. Okay? So you get in the high risk category, 3 and 4. You know, I let 3 and 4s fight. I mean, as far as from a safety perspective. Look, and when I have let 5s fight, I talk to the docs about it. I get them involved or whatever. Look, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, so don't think that's what I'm doing. I'm telling you what I do. certainly talk to my docs if I'm concerned about something. Look, I've never seen a 5 win around. I'll just leave it at that. And I don't know what these other guys do. You've got a sheet full of them other guys. You can see how they did. But I don't, you know, this is some unusual stuff down here. 7 and 9. So this is considerations. This is the way I do it. I don't really so much care about the upside down record. That happens. What have you done in your last 6? I wanted to ask Bruce, he was up here, and Greg approved the guy or whatever. I mean, my question is, what was he in his last 6? And how many times he been stopped? Look, you got to look at weight discrepancies too, and I just want to point this out. We get a lot of little lighter weight fighters in California, especially down south. They come up. We don't have as many heavyweights. A 20-year-old, very lightweight fighter is going to advance in weight over time. They just do. Keep that in mind. I think it's important because they, over time. So if you see a guy go from about 117 and 10 years later they're at 130, I don't think it's really a good idea to approve him for 117 unless you talk to your doctors about it. Okay, because it's hard for him to get down there again.
It's the same thing on the heavyweight side. Everybody knows that's where the money is. These guys want to fight heavyweight because that's where the money is. You get those 190-pounders, 195-pounders that have a 500 record, 5-5. He wants to fight heavyweight because that's where the money is. I'm not going to approve him with the kid 250, 245. He's 5-5, he's fighting a kid 5-0, and he's also giving up 60 pounds. That's not going to happen. If you give me a heavyweight that's 215, I might be able to see some leeway in that. But it also happens in the heavyweight. The weight is very important.
It's very important.
It can be very effective when he fights under 130. Very effective. He can be horrible when he starts fighting at 35 and 40. He just doesn't have that kind of record. I do it on occasion. I will say, I'll prove this bout. Contract weight must be X. I'll do that on certain occasions. I'll dictate what the contract weight will be, just so I know that that'll even the scale to some degree.
Length of inactivity. Did they go to prison? That's a question you need to ask. Why?
We used the term college.
Okay, but
We always say college.
and let me tell you, guys, I don't care how good the record. You get a guy been inactive 8, 9, 10 years, you can't put them back in there with those people they were fighting. You got to walk them back up the mountain. I think their stance is important. I'd like to know it. Who their trainer is. Now, Bob Bennett's real good about this. He'll call the trainers. I call them sometimes. But I want to know who they are. Because if you got a good trainer, a lot of these guys have got a lot of pride. They're not going to get in there to lose. So I think, don't you agree?
I'll call the trainer, and when I get a debut kid, if I have a debut kid, I ask for 3 things. One, I like to see his amateur book. I want to see the physical amateur book gets mailed into my commission. Or they fax the last couple pages so I can see it. The actual amateur book, I want to see it. But I want to see where he's training at, and that's when we'll go to that. What gym is he at? Where's he been? And then we have what we call pro debut experience form. Short and sweet. His trainer must fill it out. He has been in my gym X number of months, X number of years. I think he's competent to turn professional. I've seen him spar. It's a checklist. And the trainer must sign it. The trainer must sign it. I'll get a couple of debut kids that can't get their letter signed. Tough luck, you're not fighting here.
Bob?
But worse than that, if you get a debut kid and he's not from your state, call that state where he's from. Hey, you know this kid? You know this trainer? Call them. I get those calls a lot because we have a lot of Philly fighters. Hey, sir, do you know this kid? Yeah, he trains at a good gym. I've seen him fight amateur. It's a good resource if it's a debut kid, and if you don't know him, call the other state and see what they know about him.
Bob?
Yeah, also, if you got a fighter, many of you know, going from maybe it's pro debut or up pro debut fighter, you can call the ABC, talk Edith or Mike Martino was here yesterday, and they'll tell you how many years they've been registered with the ABC.
USA Boxing.
Well, they don't have the number of fights they have, then you can go ahead and Google that guy or that girl and say, amateur boxer so-and-so's record. And then sometimes you'll get some phenomenal information from Wikipedia that'll give you a better indication of who that fighter's being supposed to fight. And you'd be sorry, thank you. And you'd be really, you feel really good because now all of a sudden you go, oh wow, man, it's a good thing I looked this up. This amateur's got a lot of experience under his or her belt, and I'm not gonna prove this bout because they're way too experienced because they just left the ring, they just left amateurs. But then all amateurs, I know you can make an argument for this, Bruce, and rightfully so. But it's just another piece of evidence that paints the total picture on whether or not you're going to approve that fight. That's all. Thank you.
You know, matchmaking, I don't deal so much with Bruce. I deal with Brad Goodman, who also works at Top Rank. I'm sure Bruce is around when that conversation's going down, but, you know, I talk to Brad, okay? And, you know, Brad's got a pretty good understanding of what I'm going to approve, okay? Robert Diaz has got a pretty, now, look, you get a new matchmaker. I had one sent me to me the other day, 6-0 versus 1-13. Yeah, and that's not going to fly. But they need to have an understanding. Sanctioning bodies. We may have some disagreement in this room. I love them. Okay, let me tell you why I love them. Because they've looked at the fight also. Now look, and I'm not going to get involved in the politics of it. I will say this. I find some of them are better than others. I think it's a fair statement. But they look at them also. They have some medical requirements themselves, a lot of them do. I find it helpful to have that. And for me, when I'm looking at it, you know, usually the sanction for that fight, a lot of times has already happened. Sometimes it hasn't, but a lot of times it has. And, you know, if I've got questions about the guy, Rich DeCure's over there, I'll call him, or I'll call Dwayne Ford, or I'll call somebody, hey, what about it? Have you seen it? What's the deal? So anyway, I find that it just gives me another tool in the toolbox that this fighter has probably done something, even though I haven't saw him. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah.
You gonna...
I mean, when I tell my 5 points, sanctioning bodies are part of the game. They're part of our game. Not whether you like them or not, they're a part of our game. They give the fighter a chance to get a belt, earn some extra money, get a little recognition, good for the fighter. They're part of our game. And I agree with Andy. I use it as a tool. If he's ranked in the top 10, yeah, that's pretty good. These guys are putting their necks out sometimes. You're saying the same thing. I'm not going to rubber stamp him just because he's ranked in the top 10. But they're part of the equation. There's no question about it.
Now, I got this from him. You guys had that drive home where you knew you shouldn't have approved a fight, but you got talked into it? You're driving home. Luckily, a really bad outcome didn't happen, but you got talked into it. It's like a car salesman, okay? And I'm not trying to knock on you, but, you know. I mean, but it's true. I mean, I love the matchmakers. I talk to them all the time, but, I mean, they have a vested interest in their guy winning. You look at some of the fight cards in California, I can tell you who's going to win without looking at the thing by knowing which color corner. Now, that don't mean those fights are like, don't mean they're unsafe. And it really don't mean they're really uncompetitive, although it turns out sometimes that's the case. But, you know, try to take this little talk into consideration, and I would recommend you using this BSI, if nothing else, just to get you an idea of where you're at.
What would you have to add as far as a fighter like, let's say, Travis Fulton, that
300.
traveled many of the states that we regulate and fought, but he also has had over 300 professional MMA fights?
Well, I'll tell you about Travis. I let him fight. You talking about this is boxing talks. I let Travis fight at Chumash a year or two ago. I was there. Did you see it? Without knocking him, let's just say Travis is an MMA fighter. Okay? And, you know, I think Travis can fight 4-round beginners, but you can't put Travis against somebody for any kind of. And I shouldn't. I mean, look. I mean, you know, look. He's right. I mean, but you're right, Jim.
I just want to say, take into consideration those MMA bouts. You might have crossover.
And that's what I did, and I was wrong. I mean,
Let's talk about that. We had crossover fights. We had crossover fights. I have never seen an MMA. We have MMA guys coming into boxing. Very few MMA guys. I mean, very few boxers are going to MMA. Very few. But we have these MMA guys crossing in. I'm very cautious with that. But Greg, he's 15-1. He may be a good wrestler. He may be a jiu-jitsu artist. That ain't my game. That's not our game. I take that he trains and it's maybe a little part of the equation, but I have yet to see one MMA guy step into boxing at a 10-round level and be competitive.
I
haven't seen it.
I got one.
It was the wear and tear factor I was talking about. Not his skill. 300.
You know, and look, this is a good point. This is why we're having this talk. I sent him to. I medicaled him till I couldn't medical him anymore. He was just scored. He was perfect. And one thing about Travis, you guys all know who we're talking about. One thing about Travis don't gonna get too hurt. I mean, he's a good kid, and he wins a lot of fights, but he loses fights. There's no shame in that. He's had like 300 MMA fights. You know, fought for me back in '99.
But it's just an additional thing to consider.
So this is what you should do when you have a bad match. Okay.
That's not my idea.
All right, now let's look at some patterns in boxing, okay? And really my next one's a little bit better, but okay. So this is the box rec of this guy, and the one before was the Fight Facts. But look at these. Look at this pattern, okay? Look. Mexico, 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 Puerto Rico, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, Mississippi, California.
And look what he had. And look, I'm here. I'm right here. Look what he had. And I looked at this. He fought a debut kid. 0-2, 1-1, 1-0, 16-12. And I went, 16-12, at least he won. Had a draw with a guy 5-8. I thought that would be okay. It wasn't. It wasn't. We're talking about a difference. We're talking a whole different level when they come into the States. It's a whole different level.
And not always. Most of the time. Most of the time. Because they're good fighters in Mexico. Bob will research it. He knows who they are. But, you know, and look, I'm looking at that, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because I remember this. Well, Greg let him fight. Hey, and look at, but he made it to the end. He made it to the end. I mean, do we tell the Detroit Lions they can't fight anymore? The problem is this isn't football. This is a dangerous game. So I'm just showing you. You got to look at the patterns where they fought at. So this is another one, and I passed this one out. Okay, so let's all take a look at this one. I passed this one out. I denied this fight recently, but I was really, really, really on the fence about it. Bob would have denied it as soon as he got it. So it's. But I'm telling you, Bob, but this is, you know, I guess what I'm saying, this is a club show. It's the main event. I denied it. He didn't really flag high on the BSI. So you can't use the BSI as the end-all be-all. It's just, you know, you got a kid, Jose Roman, and you got the box rec and you've got the fight facts. And I think it's important that you have both of them for this exercise. And you can see, you know, all this. Oh, you don't. Here's Roman. Okay. And so on your fight facts, you got them back to back. You got them on both sides. You know, and BoxRec has a fight BoxRec has a fight in Mexico that's been verified. That's on there. Ani's not the record keeper in Mexico. It's fine. That's not what I'm pointing out. I didn't like the fight. They wanted 10. And I said no. Then they asked for 8. And I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it. And I said no again. And I was no firm. You know, it just Jose Roman's fault. Monsters. And, you know, this guy is, you know, he got him some wins down in San Diego, down there at the Bobby D show. I know who he fought. He's got some skills. I watched him on YouTube. He's got some skills. He's fought. But I didn't think it was an appropriate matchup. But I wouldn't criticize a commission that approved this match. I'm just basically pointing out, look at the patterns. You can see that he was fighting some in September of last year. He takes some time off. You know, he got stopped in one when I let him fight last February for the same promoter. And that's another thing. When the promoters get him an opponent, they'll call him back. They'll keep calling. Okay? They keep calling until you stop them. So, you know, the promoter knew how he fought. It was on the fence. If you'd approved it, I'm not, you're not going to get no criticism from me unless you approve it for 10. I didn't approve it at all. I don't think you should approve it, but I don't think it's a criticism fight. What do you think, Greg?
I didn't think. I mean, when you hit that kid that's kind of borderline that you're really struggling with, I always go to the number of rounds so that we can maybe cut it down so it's a little bit safer, and the weight. Is he competitive at this weight? If he isn't, can we bring the guy down to make sure it's the right weight? So when I'm on the fence for a fight, I'm looking at his rounds and his weight to see if we can get those in accordance so that I can approve it. If we can't, like in this case, not a 10, and if we can't come to an agreement with that, fight's off.
Bob, would you have approved this now that you've looked at it? You probably need more information, but yeah. But I mean, but you know, I did a lot of research on this one.
I would say I really agree with what you're saying, and it's an important aspect of improving fights. Because contrary to Bruce, one of the things that I do look for is what makes the fight improvable. I start off positive. What makes the fight improvable? I recently had a fight. They were adamant about going 10 rounds. And I'm talking about guys that have been in the business for years, championship fighters, representing the fighter, and you know, one fighter A has different pedigree than fighter B. I said, there's no way you're going 10 rounds. And these were real prominent people that were having a show here. I said, sorry, man, I can't do it. And I got hammered. I said, I'll tell you what, consider 8 a gift. And if you want to fight an 8, take it. If not, I'm not going to approve it. So we said, well, we'll get back to you. No problem, get back to you. They got back to me and they said,
So again, there was kind of the reason I didn't like it. He's winning against guys that are much lower level. But, and again, I think this would have probably been, and I've not researched it, but Jody approved him against an 11-0 guy. Probably get approved in California, especially at that level. Don't think that was a bad matchup, but he got stopped. I approved him in California against Giovanni, got stopped. So anyway, forget this. This is the MMA side. This is boxing talk. Rounds. Don't skip rounds. If you want to remember this, you'll never forget it. I'm going to tell you. You'll never forget. It's like when Greg Sirb. I got a story on Greg Sirb in a little while. You'll never forget this. Use the Thomas the Train song. There's 4, 6, 8, and then there's 10. Okay? Use it. You don't move a fighter from 4 to 8. You don't move a fighter from you don't move a fighter from 6 to 10. If they can't win at 6, I got to have a pretty darn good reason why they're going to 8. I got this from him. I got this from him in 2008, and I've used it ever since. It's a mountain analogy. Now, if we don't, as regulators, we are not matchmakers. That's his job. Our job is to make sure the fight's safe as much as we can through the licensing process and all the logic model that I just went out yesterday, all the pieces that we do. And I think we have a responsibility, at least to the public, to ensure a reasonable amount of competitiveness. Would you agree?
It is. It's hard. We're talking on paper.
That's on paper.
We're talking about right here. All this is on paper.
That's right.
I don't know what that kid's going to do when he comes out that night. I don't know what the favorite's going to do. I don't know what the opponent's going to do. We're only talking about on paper. On paper, I'm approving this bout. It still may end up in the first round knockout. You may get it.
That's boxing.
On paper, I'm approving the bout. But what Andy has here, we talk, walk him up a mountain. He starts out as a debut kid. And I'm talking about our natural debut kids. Not a kid out of the Olympics that's making a debut or had all these international, a regular debut kid. He starts out at 4. Maybe he gets another debut kid. Maybe your next fight's another debut kid. He's got maybe 2 knockouts in a row. And then you start walking him up the mountain a little bit. Maybe on that 3rd fight or 4th fight, hey, you got to fight somebody 3-1, 3-2. It's got some wins. You're walking him up the mountain. You're walking him up the mountain to progress his career. And at the same time, when you have that ex-champion or you have that fighter, a Fulton or of hundreds of other fighters, you walk him back down the mountain. There's no reason a kid that's now got 40 fights, 50 fights, 35, 40 years old, with a 500 record, should still compete at a 10 round. Walk him down the mountain. Because as a regulator, he's only going to get his ass whipped for 6 rounds, not 8. I'm saving him them 2 extra rounds. And as you walk that kid down, he'll retire. He'll slide out. He knows he can't compete anymore. He doesn't want to fight a 4-round fight. He'll slide out on his own. But you walk him back down the mountain and he's done. You walk him up and you walk him back down. That's one of the rules I think we have.
And what Greg just outlined is what I like to call the Mount Shasta approach. You see how it goes up slowly, peaks, and then comes down slowly. What you don't want is half dome, and you see this too much. You walk a kid up the mountain, they put them against monsters because they got a little bit of a record. They need a guy with a record to get it approved by the commission. They're trying to get it by us. They get it by us, and then they get him knocked out in 1, knocked out again, knocked out again. You never see the kid again. Now look, communication's key. The matches you should approve. This shouldn't be just between me and him. This should be between me, my doctors, my referees, not the judges. not the judges. The referees should know about this. The doctors should know about this. Anybody else you like to throw out there? I do too.
I talk to him. One, is he right-handed or left-handed? Is he Spanish-speaking? Does he speak English? If he doesn't, who in that corner is speaking English for him? Which was an issue in the New York case. No question about it. They didn't have an interpreter there. Is he a big puncher? I tell my reps. I've seen this kid. Here's his record. He's got 5 straight first-round knockouts. What's that telling you as a rep? He's coming out going for it all. So as a rep, as soon as the fight starts, I may be closing the gap in that first round. I don't want to be sitting on, the ropes. Shit's going to happen. So I walk through that. I think it's important for you guys to know, lefty or righty, does he speak English? Do we have an issue there? Is he a big-time power puncher? Mm-hmm. And last but not least, and I know it goes too, but what kind of chin does the guy have? Now, I tell my guys, this kid, I've seen this kid fight. He's got a great chin. Comes back. He's done it. I think it's important that the ref digest all that and to see what he has. That's being a communication, trying to be safe about it.
Just on one point, I'll move on. If you got a guy with a real good chin you've watched for a while, then all of a sudden they take a big knockout and they get cracked. It's been my experience they get cracked easier the next time. It's been my experience. Maybe that's based on no medicine. That's just my anecdotal viewing. But I'd keep that under your hat. I want to hear back from the referee after they've done this. Or even before. If they don't want to ref this fight, I want to know why. I sent out this little bout sheet to the officials and the referees and the doctors. I think they should take a look at it. I think they should study it. Got to have training. We've already talked about that a bunch this conference. Look, these are some things that I do think is relevant to this conversation. We'll run through them quickly. But look, dehydration, weight cutting, anti-doping, we've beat that in the ground this conference. It needs to be talked about some more.
And with the weight cutting, that's when you look at that. Look at where he's weighing at. Mm-hmm. And where he's competitive at. I don't like seeing an opponent. We both know, everybody knows he's an opponent. Why make the opponent then fight at a weight class way lower than he's used to? Now to me he's an unsafe opponent.
That's right.
We're just adding fuel to the fire. Let him fight. If you have an opponent and it's questionable and we're really struggling, make sure the weight is conducive to him, so that at least he's not coming in as an opponent and a dehydrated opponent.
And guys, Crank?
Or heavier.
A lot of times we get the light guys and they can't find an opponent for 135 or something. All of a sudden this kid's eating and drinking and trying to gain weight. And all his fights before that were 118, or under. Now he's fighting at 135. You know that they're offering him money to fight.
Yeah, that's a huge gap. Yeah, you don't want you. So, look, Dr. Ayub went over this. I won't go over this. Look, I've already said it till I'm blue in the face, but I would suggest you work with USADA and VADA. Maybe you work on your own program if you don't have one. Neurological concerns. The docs talked about this a lot in the ARP. I think your referee should certainly know some basic level of identifying a concussion.
Let's start for that reason, just that reason alone. If we get a TKO, he's on his feet, but the ref stopped the fight. Normally, that should be an automatic 30-day suspension. Automatic. Now, if it's a body shot, give yourself some leeway. I still suspend 30 days. I know some commissions body shot, it's only 15 days. I don't have a big issue with that. But if the kid has lost conscience, he's down, he was out. Whether it's 1 second, 5 seconds, he was out. For me, I think that's a minimum of 60 days. A minimum of 60 days. Because he was out. He has lost consciousness. I really wouldn't want to see that kid back in the ring in 30 days. And then you can add those 15 days maybe for a cut. You know, I love when I see reports that come from commissions, stop, lost consciousness, 60 days, needs neuro. Or cut his left eye, suspended 45 days. I get the kid on day 50. Suspension's up. I get the kid on day 50. Cut his left eye. He already got a 45-day suspension. First thing I do when that kid comes to my table and he's checking in, make sure he doesn't have a hat or a hoodie on. He's trying to cover that cut. When you come before me, you present yourself, take everything off. I want to see it. The first thing I look, I'm going to look at his left eye. If that left eye's pink, that's not healed, I'm going to take that into consideration. Say, hey, you know, I may pass that, but I'm telling my doctor, no, we got to watch this kid. That eye's still not there. If I don't like what I see, you may not fight. But I like the more information you can put on your result sheet, the better it is for everybody in this room to make a decision. That's the best thing you can do. The more information you put on, the better it is.
And
One thing I want to go back on the body shot. I seen a case where a guy got a body shot and he didn't have 30 days. There would have been a problem because he had some damage.
Body shots are always that little gray area. I like to know if it was a body shot. To me, I separate, when I'm looking at fighters, I separate the body shot from the head concussion, from the knockout. I separate those two. That doesn't mean that body shot wasn't or cannot be a bad symptom, particularly if he has injured ribs, cartilage problems, you know, that's there. But if it's a body shot, I like to see you mark it on your result sheet as such.
I threw this in there, just thought it might be somewhat relevant to this conversation. This is boxing fatalities. Now, they do this, and what's that book? It's that book. It's where it came from. And so, you know, boxing's a dangerous sport. And you can have a bad outcome trying to do as good as you can. And God forbid we have that, but you can try to do all these different steps into this program that you have to produce this, and you can still have a bad outcome because boxing's dangerous. Okay? That's the reason I'm pointing this out. But there are things that we can do that will help mitigate that. Okay? This is the number of deaths by round. And what I thought was interesting about this is look how many how many deaths are occurring kind of down here between 12, 10, and 8 as compared to 4 and 6. Does everybody see that? What I find interesting about that is there's a lot more 4s and 6s than 12s. Wouldn't you agree, Greg?
I would. And you know what? I'm not too sure there's an answer to that. I really don't.
I'm just pointing it out. It's for your. I'm not making a point. Greg, Bob.
I would just like to add, Vegas, what we like to do, we tell our referees, we're fortunate enough to have some very outstanding referees. We like to stop the fight one punch or one kick sooner than later. And the referee will never have a problem with the commission because that's the commission's policy. But in addition to minimizing boxing fatality, the minute the
And look, we're getting a little short on time. So this is the cause of death. The reason I pointed out this pie chart, I thought it was interesting because, you know, there are things, if you have good medicine and you have, there are ways, and hopefully this pie chart decreases as far as the number of nobody knows, you know. But I think that's interesting. And then I talked on this yesterday, so I don't have to talk on it again. So really, that's it. I didn't want to point this out. This is a great book. You should all read it. Okay? He knows. That's one of his kids. This professor decided to do an experiment, went and trained, signed up, fought MMA. I won't tell you if he won or lost. And he goes into, he's a researcher, and he went into why men fight and why we like to watch. So that's it.
This year that fought under suspension. We have 36 this year that fought under suspension. You got to remember, that federal law states you cannot fight while under suspension. That's a federal law. It's also in our bylaws in the ABC that we would uphold each other's suspension. Come January, coming January, every 6 months we're going to publish this on Fight News. If you're on there, you're on there. It's published on Fight News starting January 1. If you're on there, you're on there.
Does that cover the fighter who's fighting MMA?
I believe it does. I believe it does. Let's try, when we have this convention next year, let's try to keep this down to maybe 4 or 5. We kind of got away from this. 4 or 5 maybe next year. Let's try to make that a goal for the commission. Got a guy on suspension, don't let him fight. Just don't let him fight. Can't do it. It's on suspension. Matchmakers know that he's on suspension. Boom, can't fight. 36. That's a little too many.